For 72 hours, the world's most powerful space agencies watched the rogue asteroid on its path to disaster. From NORAD's quantum computers to the ESA's newest telescopes, every simulation predicted the same, terrifying outcome: a direct hit. This massive rock, dubbed Anvil 288, was on a trajectory to shatter the global communications and GPS satellite network, sending the modern world back decades. Panic filled the news channels. Experts spoke of a potential digital apocalypse. Then, an email arrived from a forgotten university observatory. It was a warning, a single pixel of dissent in the endless data stream of Cheyenne Mountain's underground command center. The email came from an old astronomer, claiming that everyone was wrong. "Another crank," muttered the young lieutenant who read it, dragging the message to his junk folder. They always come out of the woodwork during a crisis. They laughed, calling him a crank, until a young analyst, Corporal Leo Davis, bored during the night shift, decided to run the name from the email through the system: Dr. Alistair Finch. The name didn't appear in any normal civilian file. Instead, a single blood-red warning flashed on his screen: "Top secret, eyes only." And just below the name was the designation of a long-defunct project, Celestial Shepherd. On the massive screen in the command center, the path of Anvil 288 glowed as a red line, the satellite network a cluster of blue jewels. General Marcus Thorne stood with his arms crossed, watching the screen with a steel-like expression. Thorne was a man who lived by the book, a man with no room for emotion, a man who worshipped data. He had built his career on predictable outcomes and certainty. "What's the status, Dr. Petrova?" he asked the brilliant young astrophysicist beside him. Dr. Lena Petrova swiped through the latest data on her tablet. "No change, General. The trajectory is 100% confirmed. Impact in 48 hours and 12 minutes. There's no escape. We're preparing mitigation protocols, but the damage will still be catastrophic." Thorne nodded. "Understood. Continue with preparations." At the same time, hundreds of miles away, the dome of the Blackwood Mountain Observatory creaked open to the night. Inside, a warm yellow light prevailed, a stark contrast to the sterile blue of the modern command center. The air was filled with the scent of old books, brass, and machine oil. Dr. Alistair Finch was bent over the eyepiece of a massive brass telescope. Instead of digital sensors, he still used old photographic plates coated with silver nitrate, searching for the subtle details, the celestial fingerprints that computers might miss. On his desk lay a handwritten logbook containing decades of his observations and trajectory predictions for the Shepherd. On a chalkboard behind him were complex equations drawn with chalk. He had calculated Anvil 288's trajectory by hand over and over, and each time he arrived at the same conclusion: there was an anomaly. The asteroid was deviating by 1,000th of a second from where it should be. It might seem like an insignificant difference, but on this scale, this deviation meant that something, an invisible hand, was pushing the asteroid. He had called the official channels and had been dismissed as a retired professor. The officials on the phone had been polite but condescending. As a last resort, he had written that email. He knew he wouldn't get a response, but he had to try, because he knew whose invisible hand it was. He had helped create it. At NORAD, Corporal Davis was bored with the monotony of the night shift. As he cleared out junk emails, he lingered on Dr. Finch's message. It had a different tone. Not the ravings of a madman, but a tired certainty. Giving in to his curiosity, he bypassed the standard database and ran Finch's name through a deeper, classified search engine. That's when the blood-red warning flashed on his screen. Davis's heart began to race. This was far above his pay grade. But if he did nothing, and this old man was right, he couldn't bear the thought. Risking his own career, he took a printout of the warning screen and left it on Dr. Petrova's desk. "Ma'am," he whispered, "I think you need to see this." Lena Petrova was skeptical at first, but the do not contact warning accompanying the Celestial Shepherd project name bothered her. If this man was just a retired professor, why was his name protected by the highest level of security? She reran her own simulations. This time, she added a new variable to the equation, which she labeled unknown gravitational influence. The results still showed a collision, but the margin of error had increased inexplicably. "There's a ghost, General," she said, presenting her findings to General Thorne. "There's something in the data that we can't see, and this man, Dr. Finch, might know what that ghost is." Thorne laughed nervously. "A ghost, Doctor? We have billions of dollars of equipment, and you want me to believe a senile old man's ghost story? Don't waste my time." But just then, Corporal Davis burst into the room. "General! Dr. Petrova, we've detected a new deviation. It's small, just a 0.02-second arc, but it's in the direction Dr. Finch's email predicted." The room fell silent. This could no longer be a coincidence. The confident expression on General Thorne's face gave way to an anxious doubt. "Get me that man," he roared. "Send a helicopter to Blackwood Mountain. I want to hear what this ghost is from his own mouth." As the helicopter's noise filled the valley, Dr. Finch's mind had already traveled back to an underground facility in the Nevada desert in the year 1984. He was a young, ambitious theoretical physicist back then. The other brain of the project was his rival and colleague, Dr. Sallow. While Finch saw the project as an opportunity to understand the universe, Sallow saw it as a weapon. The goal of Celestial Shepherd was to create gravity anchors, small, ghost-like satellites that could bend their gravitational fields momentarily to subtly nudge Soviet spy satellites off course without an explosion or debris, without leaving detectable evidence. It was the ultimate in deniability. Finch argued for the technology to be defensive, while Sallow imagined more aggressive uses. Everything had gone perfectly until the launch of the final and most powerful satellite, Shepherd 1. The countdown, the tension in the control room. Finch had never forgotten the ambitious gleam in Sallow's eyes. The launch was a success. But minutes after reaching orbit, something went wrong. The satellite stopped responding to commands and entered a chaotic, unpredictable orbit. Its gravitational field pulsed at random intervals, bending space-time around it. In the control room that day, Finch remembered the panic as he yelled that the system was unstable, while Sallow tried to regain control. The project was canceled overnight. In a high-level meeting, as generals and politicians debated whom to blame, Sallow pinned the entire failure on Finch's overly cautious and flawed theoretical models. All records were burned, all personnel reassigned, and oaths of secrecy were sworn. Shepherd 1 was left in the system as a ghost, a ticking time bomb that no one could see but whose existence they knew. And Dr. Finch, stigmatized by the greatest failure of his career, was declared the project's scapegoat and forced into a quiet retirement, condemned to live with this secret. Sallow, meanwhile, was promoted to another clandestine project. When Finch stepped into the command center at Cheyenne Mountain, it was as if two worlds had collided, his old analog world and the cold digital world here. The generals and scientists scrutinized him as if he were some kind of relic, but Finch's eyes were not on their bright screens, but on the massive whiteboard in the middle of the room. "Give me a piece of chalk," he said simply. "Dr. Finch, we have very little time for you to explain what you know. General Thorne said impatiently. Finch seemed not to hear Thorne. He began writing complex equations on the whiteboard. Gravitational formulas, orbital mechanics, relativity theories. Dr. Petrova watched the equations with admiration. This was not knowledge learned from books. This was intuitive mastery. "You're wrong," he finally said, completing the final link in the equations. "You're all watching the asteroid, but it's just a puppet." He pointed to a spot on the board. "This is the problem. Shepard 1, my ghost." Dr. Petrova held her breath. "But that satellite was supposed to be inert." "It never was," Finch said. "It was just asleep. The mass and velocity of Anvil 288 triggered its dormant gravitational field. Now, Shepard 1 isn't just pushing the asteroid. It's using it as a slingshot. It's bending its trajectory." General Thorne stepped forward. "To where?" Finch turned to him with a pained expression. "Not to your satellite network, General. To a much worse place." He made a new calculation on the board and put an X. The coordinates under the X pointed to the center of Los Angeles. "The impact won't be on your satellite network, but on a city, and you couldn't predict it because your models don't have my ghost in them." A deathly silence fell over the command center. Billions of dollars in defense systems had been deceived by a ghost for decades. "Is there a way to stop it?" General Thorne asked. His voice for the first time filled with concern. "Yes," Finch said. "We have to shut down Shepard 1. But you can't do it with modern signals. You have to send it an old analog frequency from 1984, a shutdown command that only I know, like a lullaby." It was a massive gamble. If Finch was wrong, they would waste precious hours chasing a lullaby. If he was right, he would save millions of lives. General Thorne had to make the most difficult decision of his career. Would he trust the data in front of him, or the 40 years of guilt in the eyes of the old man looking at him? "Prepare the frequency," Thorne said. "Divert all power to that old signal." The transmission was sent. Everyone in the command center held their breath, watching the red line on the main screen. 1 minute passed, 2 minutes, 3. Nothing changed. Thorne began to think he had made the mistake of his life. And then it happened. The red line showing Anvil 288's trajectory suddenly flickered and changed course sharply. The new path pointed millions of miles away from Earth, into the harmless void of deep space. The center erupted with a sigh of relief, followed by applause. What technology couldn't defeat, the wisdom of a forgotten man had. In the midst of the chaos, General Thorne approached Finch, who was quietly watching the main star map. "I don't know how to thank you, Doctor." Then he added, "But I have one more question. Was this a coincidence? The asteroid being on the exact trajectory to trigger Shepard 1? Finch replied without taking his eyes off the map. "There are no coincidences in the universe, General. Only equations we haven't yet understood. And I know only one other person who could understand this equation." His eyes met Thorne's. "Dr. Sallow, my old colleague. He is clever enough to know this asteroid could be used as a weapon, and ruthless enough to do it." General Thorne was shaken by this new information. This wasn't just the prevention of a natural disaster. It was the foiling of a secret attack. "Now, if you don't mind, I'd like to go home," Finch said. "My telescope is waiting." Thorne offered him a position, a restoration of his reputation. But Finch politely refused. His world was no longer these bright screens, but the silence of the stars. Corporal Davis felt honored to have witnessed these historic moments. Before leaving, General Thorne came up to him. "You did good work today, Corporal." Sometimes the most important discoveries come from those who show the courage to bend the rules a little. For Davis, this was the greatest medal he could ever receive. As the world read headlines about the near-miss disaster, a few people deep inside Cheyenne Mountain knew the truth. The sky was full of ghosts created by men. And sometimes, the only person who knows how to speak to those ghosts is a forgotten old man who watches the stars. Dr. Finch returned to his dusty observatory that night, went to his old brass telescope, and continued to listen to the silence of the universe. But this time, next to his old logbook, he opened a new one. The title was Shepherd 2. Because he knew that as long as men like Sallow existed, the equations would always need to be rebalanced. He was a silent guardian, watching over secrets older than the computers that tried to replace him.